The massive space station hung in the void like a metal city among the stars. Ships of every shape and size docked at its many ports. Some looked like crystal spears, others like living creatures with metal skin. The Galactic Council Station was the center of known civilization, where dozens of alien species came together to make decisions that affected billions of worlds. In the main council chamber, representatives from across the galaxy sat in their special seats. Each seat was designed for a different type of being. Some breathed different air, some needed different gravity, and some were not even solid matter at all. Vorthak, the council chairman, was a large reptilian creature with dark green scales that reflected the chamber's blue lights. His yellow eyes scanned a datapad with growing irritation. As the leader of the Keth Empire, he had seen many species try to join the galactic community. Most failed the basic tests. Those that passed usually sent impressive fleets to show their power and technology. Another application, Vorthak announced to the chamber, his voice carrying easily through the translation systems that let all species understand each other. A species calling themselves humans from the outer spiral arm. A few council members shifted in their seats. The outer spiral arm was considered a backwater region where only primitive species lived. Most civilizations there had barely discovered fire, let alone space travel. Nexara, who appeared as a shifting cloud of golden energy contained in a crystal sphere, pulsed with curiosity. As the representative of the Luminar Collective, she was always interested in new forms of technology and thought. What do they offer as proof of their civilization level? Vorthak's expression showed clear amusement. They say they will send one ship. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in various sounds that the translation system interpreted as laughter. Clicks, whistles, electronic buzzes, and roars filled the air as representatives from different species expressed their disbelief. Bulkrin, whose thick armor-like shell made him look like a walking tank, stamped his heavy feet on the chamber floor. One ship? Even the weakest species sent at least 10 vessels for evaluation. The Zephyrians sent 50 ships and were barely accepted. Perhaps they do not understand our requirements, suggested Nexara, though her energy pattern showed doubt. The message, transmission quality was quite good for such a distant region. Vorthak pulled up the human message on the chamber's main display. The holographic screen showed a recording of a human male with dark hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple uniform that looked practical rather than ceremonial. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the human said in clear, measured tones. "I am Admiral Deho of the human vessel Indomitable. Humanity wishes to join the galactic community. We understand you require a demonstration of our technological and military capabilities. We offer our ship for your evaluation." The message continued with basic information about human civilization. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only recently. Their home system contained one habitable world with about 8 billion inhabitants. They had no empire, no conquered worlds, and no massive fleets. "They are clearly primitive," Bulkrin declared. "Look at their ship count. 1 world, 1 ship. My people had 100 vessels before we even left our home system." The transmission technology is surprisingly advanced for such a young species, Nexara observed, and their faster-than-light capability appears to be quite efficient. Vorthak waved a clawed hand dismissively. Many species achieve FTL travel before they understand its limitations. They probably used all their resources to build one decent ship and think it will impress us. The Council had evaluation protocols for a reason. Over thousands of years, they had learned that species needed to prove themselves worthy of joining galactic civilization. Too many primitive races had been given advanced technology only to use it for self-destruction or to threaten others. "Should we even bother with the evaluation?" asked another representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature whose thoughts appeared as colored patterns on its transparent body. "They clearly do not meet the minimum fleet requirements. Protocol requires that we test any species that achieves independent FTL travel and requests evaluation," Nexara reminded the chamber. "We cannot simply dismiss them without following proper procedures." Vorthak sighed, a sound that came out as a low rumble. Very well. We will conduct the standard evaluation. How long until their ship arrives? According to their message, they should reach the test coordinates within 3 standard days, reported the Chamber's AI system. Assemble the standard evaluation fleet, Vorthak ordered. 12 ships should be more than enough to properly test one primitive vessel. As the council session ended, representatives began to leave the chamber. Most seemed to view the upcoming evaluation as a formality that would quickly result in humanity's rejection from galactic society. In space, 3 days' travel from the council station, the human ship Indomitable moved through hyperspace. The vessel was sleek but not particularly large by galactic standards. Its hull was a dark gray metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. On the ship's bridge, Admiral Deho stood looking at the stars visible through the main window. He was a man in his 40s with calm eyes that missed very little. His uniform was simple but well-made, designed for function rather than display. "Admiral," called Sujin from her station. She was the ship's chief engineer, a woman in her 30s with quick hands and an even quicker mind. "We'll drop out of hyperspace in 6 hours." "Thank you, Sujin. Are all systems ready?" "All systems are operating within normal parameters," she replied. "Though I've been thinking about their evaluation requirements." Deho turned to face her. "Concerns?" "Not concerns exactly," Sujin said carefully. "It's just that their standard tests seem very straightforward, almost predictable." Kiwoo, the ship's diplomatic officer and language specialist, looked up from his own station. He was a young man with an easy smile who had spent years studying alien cultures from long-range observations. "That might be intentional. They probably want to see how we handle known challenges before introducing unknown ones. Or they think we're so primitive that basic tests will be enough to show our limitations," added Yeonsu from the tactical station. She was a woman with sharp eyes who had trained in every form of combat known to humanity. "Their message responses suggested they don't expect much from us." Deho nodded slowly. "That could work to our advantage. What did you learn from their communication patterns, Kiwoo?" "Fascinating stuff, actually," Kiwoo replied, pulling up data on his screen. "They have at least 6 major species in their council, each with very different ways of thinking. The reptilian chairman seems focused on hierarchy and strength. The energy beings appear more interested in technology and knowledge. The armored species values military power above all else." "Predictable patterns?" Yeonsu asked. "Very predictable," Kiwoo confirmed. "Each species seems to have developed along fairly rigid lines, strong military traditions, but not much flexibility in their tactics." Sujin frowned at her engineering displays. "That explains why their ship designs are so standardized. Each species builds everything the same way, just bigger or smaller versions of the same basic pattern. Deho began. "While we adapt," Yeonsu finished. "Every human ship is different because every mission is different." The bridge fell quiet as the crew considered this. Humanity had developed space technology under very different circumstances than most galactic species. Earth had limited resources, no nearby worlds to colonize, and a strong tradition of making the most out of whatever was available. "Admiral," Sujin said quietly, "are you sure about this approach? We could have brought more ships. The Aurora and the Defiance are both ready for deployment." Deho smiled slightly. "Sujin, what was the first rule of human space exploration?" "Always assume you're on your own," she replied immediately. "Every ship must be capable of handling any situation independently." "And what does that mean for the Indomitable?" Sujin's expression shifted as she understood. "It means we're not just one ship. We're a complete fleet that happens to travel in one package." "Exactly," Deho said. "The aliens think in terms of fixed formations and standard tactics. They see one ship and assume one set of capabilities. They've never encountered a species that builds each vessel to be completely self-sufficient." Kiwoo pulled up more data from his cultural analysis. "Their evaluation tests are designed around the assumption that more ships means more power. They can't conceive of a single vessel that might be more effective than their entire test fleet. Should we reveal our full capabilities during the evaluation? Yansu asked. That depends on what they throw at us, Deho replied. We'll start simple and escalate only as needed. The goal is to join their community, not frighten them. And if they try to dismiss us without a fair evaluation? Sujin asked. Deho's expression became more serious. Then we show them exactly why humanity sends one ship when other species send dozens. The hours passed quickly as the crew made final preparations. The Indomitable carried more than just a standard crew. It also housed the most advanced artificial intelligence systems humanity had ever built, manufacturing capabilities that could produce new equipment during flight, and modular components that could. The first test began exactly as described in the Galactic protocols. The alien evaluation fleet spread out in a wide formation, with their largest ship taking the center position. Bright beams of energy shot out from various vessels, creating a series of obstacles that the human ship would need to navigate around. Standard obstacle course, Yansu observed from her tactical station. They want to see our maneuvering capabilities. Admiral Deho studied the pattern on the main screen. The course was challenging but followed predictable geometric shapes. Sharp turns, narrow passages, and timed barriers that required precise navigation. Sujin, take us through at normal acceleration. Normal acceleration? Sujin asked, her fingers hovering over the controls. We could complete this course in half the time if I push the engines. I know, Deho replied calmly. But we want them to see competent performance, not exceptional performance. Not yet. The Indomitable moved through the obstacle course with smooth precision. It avoided every energy barrier, made every turn at exactly the right moment, and maintained perfect course alignment throughout the test. The performance was good enough to show capability, but not so impressive as to surprise the observers. On the alien command ship, Vorthak watched the human vessel navigate the course. Adequate, he commented to his officers. Their pilot is skilled, but the ship's acceleration is limited compared to galactic standards. Should we increase the difficulty level? Asked his tactical officer. Not necessary, Vorthak replied. This confirms what we expected. They have decent technology for a primitive species, but they lack the power systems for truly impressive performance. What Vorthak didn't know was that Sujin was running the engines at only 30% of their actual capability. The Indomitable could have completed the course in less than half the time while performing maneuvers that would have looked impossible to the alien observers. As the first test ended, Kiwu monitored the alien communications. Each species in the evaluation fleet was reporting their observations to their own governments, and the translation systems picked up most of their conversations. The reptilian species is focused on our engine output, Kiwu reported quietly to Deho. They're measuring everything in terms of raw power. The energy beings are more interested in our navigation computers. They keep trying to scan our AI systems. What about the armored species? Deho asked. They're studying our hull composition and looking for weapons, Kiwu replied. They seem disappointed that we're not showing any obvious armaments. Yansu smiled slightly at this. The Indomitable carried more firepower than any 3 ships in the alien fleet, but human weapon design was very different from galactic standards. Instead of massive external guns that everyone could see, human ships integrated their weapons into the hull structure itself. The second test began without warning. Suddenly, the alien ships opened fire on the Indomitable with what appeared to be full-power weapons. Bright energy beams and explosive projectiles filled the space around the human vessel. Shields up, Deho ordered calmly, though every human on the bridge knew the weapons were set to training levels that couldn't actually damage their ship. They're testing our defensive capabilities, Yansu reported. Multiple attack vectors, sustained fire patterns. Classic galactic military doctrine. Sujin engaged the ship's defensive systems. Energy barriers appeared around the Indomitable, deflecting the incoming fire with bright flashes of light. The ship rocked slightly with each impact, making it appear that the crew was working hard to maintain their defenses. In reality, the alien weapons were barely scratching the ship's outer shielding. Human defensive technology was based on layered, protection systems that could absorb incredible amounts of damage. The slight rocking motion was Sujin's way of making their defenses look more stressed than they actually were. Interesting shield technology, Nexara observed from her position in the alien formation. As an energy being, she could sense the true nature of the human defensive systems better than the other species. Their barriers are much more sophisticated than they appear. What do you mean? Vorthak demanded over the communication link. The energy patterns are wrong, Nexara explained. Their shields should be failing under this level of sustained fire, but the core defensive matrix isn't even fully engaged. Vorthak's expression showed irritation. Are you saying they're holding back? I'm saying their technology works differently than ours, Nexara replied carefully. Their shields aren't just blocking our attacks, they're absorbing and redirecting the energy. On the Indomitable's bridge, Sujin confirmed Nexara's observation. The energy being is getting curious about our shield configuration. Should I show her something more interesting? Not yet, Deho decided. Let her wonder. Curiosity might make her an ally later. The weapons test continued for several more minutes before the alien fleet ceased fire. The Indomitable's shields had held perfectly, though Sujin had made sure to show some fluctuations that suggested the defenses were being pushed to their limits. Adequate defensive capability, Vorthak announced over the communication channel. Your shields performed within expected parameters for a vessel of your size. Thank you, Chairman, Deho replied politely. We appreciate the thorough evaluation. The third test involved speed and endurance. The alien fleet formed a long course through the local star system, marked by beacon buoys that the human ship would need to reach in sequence. The course was designed to test both maximum velocity and the ability to maintain high speed over extended distances. This should be interesting, Sujin commented as she studied the course layout. They want to see if we can keep up with their fleet over a long-distance run. Can we? Kiwu asked. Sujin grinned. We could lap them twice and still have energy left over. But that's not the point, is it? No, Deho agreed. The point is to show we belong in their community, not that we're superior to them. The race began with all 13 ships accelerating toward the first beacon. The alien vessels quickly reached their maximum velocities, forming a loose formation as they flew through space. The Indomitable kept pace with the middle of the pack, neither falling behind nor pulling ahead. As the course progressed, some of the alien ships began to show signs of strain. Their engines glowed brighter as they pushed their power systems harder. A few ships started to fall behind as their crews chose to conserve energy for later parts of the test. The Indomitable maintained its position effortlessly. Sujin was running, the engines at 40% capacity, which was enough to keep pace with the fastest alien ships while making it look like the human vessel was working hard to maintain the speed. 2 of the ships are dropping back, Yansu reported. Engine stress indicators suggest they're approaching their maximum safe operating levels. And we're barely breaking a sweat, Kiwu observed. Their power systems must be much less efficient than ours. Different design philosophy, Sujin explained. They build for maximum power output. We build for maximum efficiency. Their ships can produce more energy in short bursts, but they can't sustain high performance for extended periods. While our ships are designed for long-term operations with minimal support, Deho added, every human vessel has to be capable of independent operation for months or even years. As the race continued, the differences in design philosophy became more apparent. The alien ships were impressive in short sprints but struggled with sustained high-speed flight. The Indomitable, meanwhile, seemed to get more efficient the longer it ran. Nexara was the first to notice the anomaly. Chairman Vorthak, she transmitted, over the fleet communication channel. Are you monitoring the human ship's energy output? Of course, Vorthak replied. They're maintaining position adequately. That's not what I mean, Nexara said. Their energy signature isn't changing. At EY, their engines should be showing stress indicators by now, but their power output is completely steady. Bulkran, whose ship was starting to fall behind in the race, growled his frustration over the communication link. Maybe their sensors are broken, Or their engines are so primitive they don't have proper monitoring systems. No, Nexara insisted. Their technology is different, more advanced in some ways. They're not pushing their engines because they don't need to. That ship has much more power available than it's currently using. This observation caused some concern among the alien fleet commanders, but they decided to continue the evaluation, as planned. Perhaps the energy being was mistaken, or perhaps the humans were using technology that was advanced in some areas while being primitive in others. The speed test ended with the Indomitable finishing in the middle of the pack, exactly where Deho had intended. The human ship showed no signs of stress or fatigue, while several alien vessels were clearly pushed to their limits. The fourth test was the most complex yet. The alien fleet created a simulated combat scenario with multiple objectives. The human ship would need to defend a civilian transport while simultaneously attacking enemy positions and avoiding various hazards. This is more like a real military operation, Yeonsu observed as she studied the test parameters. They want to see how we handle multiple priorities under pressure. Can you manage it with our current level of performance? Deho asked. Yeonsu considered the question carefully. The alarm came without warning. Every ship in the evaluation fleet received the same emergency signal at exactly the same moment. The sound was unlike anything the human crew had heard before, a deep, pulsing tone that seemed to carry fear and desperation across the void of space. What is that? Kiwoo asked, his translation system struggling to process the complex harmonic patterns. Emergency alert, Yeonsu replied, reading the tactical displays. Galactic-wide priority signal. Something very bad is happening. On the main communication channel, Vorthak's voice cut through the alarm. His usual calm composure was gone, replaced by urgency that made his reptilian features seem more predatory. All ships, prepare for immediate departure. We have a code. Black situation. Code black? Deho asked over the open channel. Devourer fleet, Vorthak replied grimly. Long-range sensors detected them entering this sector. All civilian populations are being evacuated immediately. Admiral Deho felt his stomach tighten. The humans had studied galactic history during their preparation for first contact. The Devourer fleet was mentioned in every military database. They had accessed, always with the same warnings, ancient biomechanical ships that consumed entire civilizations, technology that seemed to grow stronger with each battle, a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. How many ships? Deho asked. Initial count shows at least 40 vessels, Vorthak reported. Standard protocol requires immediate withdrawal. No engagement unless we have overwhelming force superiority. What constitutes overwhelming force? Kiwoo asked quietly. Against the Devourers? Vorthak's laugh was bitter. Galactic doctrine says minimum 50 ships, preferably 100. We have 13 vessels, and most of those are lightly armed evaluation ships. On her tactical display, Yeonsu watched as the alien fleet began to form up for retreat. Their movements were quick but showed obvious signs of panic. Ships that had moved in perfect formation during the evaluation tests now struggled to maintain basic coordination. They're scared, she observed. Really scared. Can you blame them? Sujin asked, pulling up data from their long-range sensors. If these devourers are half as dangerous as the galactic databases suggest, 13 ships won't even slow them down. Admiral Deho studied the tactical situation on his command display. The Devourer fleet was still several hours away, but they were moving fast and in a direct line toward the nearest inhabited system. Millions of lives hung in the balance. Chairman Vorthak, Deho said over the communication channel. What about the civilian evacuation? Evacuation ships are already launching from the nearby colonies, Vorthak replied. But they're slow and heavily loaded. The Devourers will reach them before they can escape to hyperspace. Then we need to buy them time. Vorthak's image appeared. On the main screen, his yellow eyes showing disbelief. Admiral Deho, you don't understand the situation. The Devourer fleet destroys everything in its path. Engaging them with 13 ships would be suicide. What if we don't engage them directly? Deho asked. What if we just delay them long enough for the civilians to escape? Impossible, Bulkran interrupted over the communication link. Devourer ships are faster than our evacuation transports. The only way to save the civilians is to destroy the enemy fleet, and we don't have enough firepower. Daeho looked around his bridge, at his crew. Sujin was running calculations on her engineering displays. Kiwoo was analyzing the galactic fleet's communication patterns. Yansu was studying the approaching enemy formation with the focused intensity of a predator. "Admiral," Sujin said quietly, "I'm reading the technical specifications for these Devourer ships from the galactic databases. Their technology is impressive, but it's old. Very old. Their tactics haven't changed in centuries." "Meaning?" Daeho asked. "Meaning they're predictable," Yansu answered. "They use the same attack patterns, the same formations, the same strategies they've always used. They win through overwhelming force, not through innovation." Kaiwu looked up from his cultural analysis. The galactic response to them is also predictable. Always the same tactics, always the same retreat protocols. No one has tried anything new against them in generations. Admiral Daeho made his decision. "Chairman Vorthak, we request permission to engage the Devourer fleet." The communication channel fell silent for several long seconds. When Vorthak finally responded, his voice was filled with confusion and concern. "Admiral, I don't think you understand. One ship cannot stand against a Devourer fleet. It would be a meaningless sacrifice." "With respect, Chairman, you don't know what one human ship can do." "This is madness," Bulkran protested. "No single vessel has ever survived contact with the Devourers." "Then it's time someone tried a different approach," Daeho replied calmly. "Sujin, begin unlocking our primary systems." "Finally," Sujin said with obvious relief. "I was getting tired of pretending we were primitive." On her engineering display, dozens of new indicators came online. Systems that had been dormant throughout the evaluation suddenly showed active status. The Indomitable's true capabilities began to emerge from their carefully maintained disguise. "What are you doing?" Nixara asked, her energy pattern showing intense curiosity as she detected the changes in the human ship's power signature. "Preparing for battle," Yansu replied simply as her tactical displays expanded to show dozens of weapon systems that had been hidden throughout the ship's hull. The transformation was remarkable to observe. The Indomitable had appeared to be a single, unremarkable vessel. Now it was revealing itself to be something entirely different. Modular sections of the hull began to separate, forming individual spacecraft that remained connected to the main ship by energy tethers. "Impossible," Vorthak whispered as he watched the human ship reconfigure itself. "How many vessels are you?" "That depends on how you count," Daeho replied. "We're one ship that can become many, or many ships that choose to travel as one." Fighter craft detached from the main hull, each one piloted by artificial intelligence systems that moved with inhuman precision. Weapon platforms extended from hidden bays, revealing firepower that dwarfed anything the alien evaluation fleet carried. Support vessels emerged from what had appeared to be cargo holds, equipped with repair systems and defensive barriers. "This is not possible," Bulkran insisted, his armored form shaking with disbelief. "No single ship can carry this much equipment." "Human ships are built differently," Sujin explained as she continued the unlocking sequence. "We don't separate our vessels into different types like your fleets do. Every human ship is designed to be completely self-sufficient." "But the mass ratios," Nixara protested. "The energy requirements, the computational power needed to coordinate all those individual craft are all manageable," Kiwoo replied. "If you design your technology from the beginning to work together instead of trying to force separate systems to cooperate." On the tactical display, the Devourer fleet was becoming visible to the naked eye. 40 ships of various sizes, their hulls appearing to be part machine and part living tissue. They moved in a formation that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, confident in their ability to overwhelm any opposition through sheer force. "They're maintaining standard attack formation," Yansu observed. "Just like the databases predicted. They haven't changed their tactics in centuries." "Why would they?" Daeho asked. "Their tactics have always worked before." The human ship continued its transformation. What had been one vessel was now 37 individual craft, each one specialized for different aspects of combat. Fast attack fighters, heavy weapon platforms, defensive screen generators, electronic warfare units, and support vessels all maintained their connection to the central command ship through quantum communication links. "How do you coordinate so many individual units?" Vorthak asked, his tactical training making him appreciate the complexity of what he was witnessing. "Advanced artificial intelligence," Sujin replied. "Each craft has its own AI system, but they're all connected to the central coordination network. They can react faster than any biological crew and adapt their tactics in real time." "This is not how we understood human technology," Nexara said, her energy pattern showing confusion and fascination in equal measure. "This is why we sent one ship," Deho explained. "Not because one ship was all we could spare, but because one ship was all we needed." The Devourer fleet was close enough now that individual ship designs were visible. The largest vessels were massive biomechanical constructs that looked like they had grown rather than been built. Smaller ships darted around the main formation like predatory fish, their hulls pulsing with organic energy patterns. "They're accelerating," Yonsu reported. "Standard Devourer attack pattern. They'll try to overwhelm us with concentrated fire from their heavy ships while their fast attack craft engage at close range." "How do you know their attack patterns?" Bulkrin demanded. "We studied your databases," Kai Wu replied. "Every engagement with the Devourers for the past 1,000 years. Their tactics haven't changed because they haven't needed to change. No one has ever forced them to adapt." "And you think you can?" Admiral Deho smiled grimly. "We think it's time the galaxy learned what human warfare looks like." The Devourer fleet opened fire first, as they always did. Massive energy beams lanced across space, aimed at the Devourer fleet's confusion lasted only minutes. These were ancient beings who had survived for thousands of years by adapting to new threats, even if they rarely encountered any. As the human fighters continued their devastating attacks, the biomechanical ships began to change their behavior. "They're learning," Yonsu observed from her tactical station. "The remaining ships are spreading out, trying to prevent coordinated attacks on single targets." "Faster than expected," Kiwu noted, monitoring the enemy communications. "Their language is fascinating. It's not just spoken words, but bioelectrical impulses that carry emotional and tactical information simultaneously." Admiral Deho watched the enemy formation shift on his displays. The Devourers were abandoning their traditional tight formations and spreading across a much wider area of space. It was a logical response to the human tactics, but it also created new opportunities. "Sujin, how are our AI systems handling the adaptation?" "Very well," Sujin replied, her fingers dancing across multiple control surfaces. "The AIs are updating their attack patterns in real time. Every successful hit teaches them more about Devourer defensive capabilities, and every miss teaches them how the enemy moves," Yonsu added. Human warfare doctrine in action. The battle had revealed something important about human military philosophy. While galactic species tended to focus on building bigger, more powerful ships, humans had focused on building smarter, more adaptable systems. Every human fighter craft was equipped with learning algorithms that could analyze enemy behavior and adjust their tactics accordingly. "Look at their weapon effectiveness," Nexara observed from the alien evaluation fleet, which was maintaining a safe distance from the battle. "Their hit ratio is increasing with every minute of combat." "How is that possible?" Bulkrin demanded. "Weapon accuracy should decrease as targets become more evasive." "Unless the weapons are getting smarter," Nexara replied thoughtfully. "Unless each shot teaches the targeting system something new about how the enemy moves." On the battlefield, the human fighters were demonstrating exactly that principle. What had started as a roughly 60% hit ratio had climbed to over 80% as the AI systems learned to predict Devourer evasion patterns. But the Devourers were learning too. The biomechanical ships began to coordinate their movements in ways the galactic databases had never recorded. Instead of operating as individual vessels, they started to move like a single organism, sharing information and tactical data at speeds that approached the human AI systems. "Interesting," Daeho commented as he watched the enemy adaptation. They're showing capabilities that weren't in any of the galactic records. That's because no one has ever forced them to use these capabilities before, Kai Wu explained. Every previous engagement has been won through overwhelming force. They've never needed to show their full potential. Then we're about to learn what they're really capable of, Yansu said grimly. The Devourer counterattack came as a coordinated wave of bioelectrical energy that swept across the battlefield like a living storm. Instead of targeting individual human craft, the energy wave attempted to disrupt the quantum communication links that allowed the human fleet to coordinate its actions. Communication interference, Su Jin reported as several indicators on her displays turned red. They're trying to isolate our individual units. Can you compensate? Already working on it, Su Jin replied. But this is sophisticated jamming. They understand our technology better than we expected. Several human fighters found themselves cut off from the central coordination network. Instead of becoming helpless, however, they immediately shifted to independent operation mode. Each craft carried enough AI processing power to function as a complete tactical unit, even without connection to the larger network. Remarkable, Forthak commented as he watched the isolated human craft continue their attacks without missing a beat. They don't need constant coordination to remain effective. Redundancy principle, Daeho explained over the communication channel. Every human system is designed to function independently if necessary. We assume that communications will fail, that units will be isolated, and that command structures will be disrupted. While galactic military doctrine assumes that communication and coordination will always be available, Bulkrin realized, our ships become much less effective when separated from fleet command. The battle continued to escalate as both sides revealed capabilities that had been hidden or unused. The Devourers deployed weapon systems that seemed to grow from their hulls like living organisms, creating new threats that the human AI systems had to analyze and counter in real time. In Donnersetindime response, the human fighters began to demonstrate the full flexibility of their modular design. Individual craft combined into larger units for heavy assault missions, then split apart into smaller formations for precision strikes. Weapon platforms reconfigured themselves to match specific enemy vulnerabilities, while defensive units created overlapping shield networks that protected the entire human fleet. How many different configurations can they achieve? Shangzara asked in amazement as she watched a group of human fighters merge into a single large vessel, engage a Devourer ship, then split apart into 6 different craft that scattered in all directions. As many as necessary, Su Jin replied. Modular design means infinite adaptability. The tide of battle began to turn as human adaptability proved superior to Devourer experience. While the biomechanical ships could learn and evolve, they were still constrained by millions of years of evolutionary programming. The human AI systems, in contrast, had been designed from the beginning to think in completely new ways. Enemy fleet is down to 28 vessels, Yansu reported. But they're grouping around their command ship. I think they're preparing for a final assault. What kind of assault? Daeho asked. Unknown. The energy readings from their command ship are unlike anything in our databases. On the enemy command vessel, ancient biomechanical systems that had slept for millennia began to awaken. The Devourer fleet had faced extinction before, and they had survival mechanisms that younger species could not imagine. All ships, prepare for biomantic fusion, the Devourer commander transmitted in its complex bioelectrical language. Kiwu's translation system struggled with the unfamiliar terms. Biomantic fusion? I have no reference for that phrase. Neither do our databases, Su Jin confirmed. Whatever they're about to do, it's not in any galactic records. The remaining Devourer ships began to move toward their command vessel, but instead of forming a traditional formation, they started to physically merge with the larger ship. Biomechanical tentacles reached out from the command vessel, grasping the smaller ships and pulling them into its hull. They're combining into a single entity, Yansu observed with growing concern. 28 ships becoming one massive vessel. Can they do that? Bulkrin asked over the communication channel. Apparently, Nexara replied, her energy pattern showing fascination and fear. Their biotechnology is far more advanced than any of us realized. The fusion process took only minutes, but the result was terrifying to observe. Where 28 separate ships had been, now there was a single massive organism that pulsed with bioelectrical energy. It was easily 10 times larger than any ship in the galactic databases, and it radiated power signatures that defied conventional understanding. "That thing is enormous," Kiwu said quietly. "Size isn't everything," Deho replied, but his expression showed concern. "Yonsu, can our weapons damage something that large?" "Unknown," Yonsu replied honestly. "Our weapons are designed for precision strikes against ship-sized targets. This thing is more like a small moon." The fused devourer entity turned toward the human fleet with movements that seemed to bend space itself. When it opened fire, the energy beams were unlike anything that had been seen before. Instead of discrete weapon strikes, it projected waves of destructive force that filled entire regions of space. "Evasive maneuvers," Deho ordered, but several human craft were caught in the energy waves before they could escape. "Lost 4 fighters," Yansu reported grimly. Their defensive systems couldn't handle that level of destructive energy. For the first time since the battle began, the human fleet was taking significant casualties. The fused devourer entity was demonstrating why the biomechanical ships had terrorized the galaxy for so long. When pressed to their limits, they could become something beyond the understanding of normal military doctrine. "We need a new approach," Sujin said, running calculations on her engineering displays. "Conventional tactics won't work against something that large and powerful." "Then we use unconventional tactics," Deho decided. "What do humans do when faced with an enemy too large to fight directly?" "We change the rules of engagement," Yunsu replied, understanding immediately. "Exactly. Sujin, prepare for Protocol 7, Sujin's eyes widened. "Admiral, are you sure? Protocol 7 has never been tested in actual combat." "Then we'll find out if it works," Deho said grimly. Protocol 7 was one of humanity's most desperate military strategies designed for situations where conventional warfare had failed completely. Instead of trying to destroy an overwhelming enemy, Protocol 7 focused on making the enemy destroy itself. "What is Protocol 7? Vorthak asked. "Over the communicatio." The massive fused entity writhed in space as internal conflicts tore through its biomechanical systems. 28 individual ship minds, each with millions of years of independent existence, struggled against the forced unity that had been imposed upon them. The psychological warfare of Protocol 7 had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. "The entity is destabilizing," Yonsu reported, watching the tactical displays with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "But it's also becoming more dangerous. Desperate opponents are unpredictable opponents." Admiral Deho studied the chaotic energy patterns emanating from the enemy vessel. "How long before it either regains control or destroys itself completely?" "Unknown," Sujin replied. "The bioelectrical feedback is creating cascade failures throughout the fused systems. It could collapse in minutes, or it could find a way to stabilize." "And if it stabilizes?" Kiwu asked. "Then we face an enemy that has learned to overcome psychological warfare," Deho said grimly. "An enemy that will be much harder to defeat the next time." On the observation deck of the alien evaluation fleet, the galactic representatives watched the battle with growing amazement. What they had expected to be a quick defeat for the primitive human ship had become the most effective anti-devourer engagement in recorded history. "Impossible," Vorthak muttered, his reptilian features showing confusion and growing respect. "No single species has ever forced the devourers to such desperate measures." "They are not fighting like a single species," Nexara observed, her energy patterns shifting to show deep contemplation. "They are fighting like something completely new." Bulkrin's armored form shifted restlessly as he watched the human fleet continue its psychological assault on the fused entity. Their tactics make no sense according to galactic military doctrine. They should be trying to destroy the enemy, not confuse it. Perhaps that is why they are succeeding where we have always failed, Nexara suggested. "We have been fighting the devourers the same way for millennia." The humans are fighting them in ways the Devourers have never experienced. The fused entity suddenly stopped its chaotic writhing and turned toward the human fleet with renewed purpose. The internal conflicts had not destroyed it, but had instead forced it to evolve. The individual ship minds had found a new way to work together, one that incorporated the lessons learned from the human psychological attack. "It's adapting," Yansu warned. "The entity has found a way to use our own tactics against us." "How?" Deho asked. "It's replicating our coordination patterns," Sujin explained, studying the enemy's bioelectrical signatures. "The individual ship minds are now communicating the same way our AI systems do. They've learned to function as a true collective intelligence." The transformed entity began to move with a grace and coordination that surpassed even the human fleet. Instead of the rigid formations that had characterized Devourer tactics for millennia, it now flowed through space like a single organism that could think with multiple minds simultaneously. "This is what we get for teaching our enemies to be smarter," Kiwu observed with dark humor. "But it's also what makes us human," Deho replied. "We don't just adapt to our enemies. We force them to adapt to us, even if it makes them more dangerous." The entity opened fire with weapons that had learned from human precision and Devourer power. Energy beams that moved with the accuracy of AI targeting systems, but carried the devastating force of biomechanical technology. Several human fighters were destroyed before they could evade the new attack patterns. "We're losing the advantage," Yansu reported. "The entity is now using our own coordination methods against us." "Then we need to change the game again," Deho decided. "Sujin, prepare for Protocol Omega." "Protocol Omega?" Sujin's face showed shock. "Admiral, that protocol is theoretical. It's never been tested." "Neither was Protocol 7 until today," Deho replied. "What does Protocol Omega require?" Sujin checked her systems with obvious reluctance. "Complete integration of all human and AI systems. Every craft, every weapon, every defensive system functioning as a single unified entity." "The same thing the Devourers just achieved," Kiwu realized. "Exactly," Deho confirmed. "Except we designed our systems to work this way from the beginning. Theirs are forcing themselves into unnatural unity." "But Admiral," Sujin protested, "Protocol Omega means giving complete control to the AI systems. The human crew becomes passengers in their own ships." "Sometimes the best way to win is to let someone else fight the battle," Deho said calmly. "Execute Protocol Omega." Sujin's hands moved across her controls with swift precision. Throughout the human fleet, individual craft began to synchronize their operations at a level that had never been attempted before. AI systems that had been operating as separate entities merged into a single collective intelligence that spanned 33 separate vessels. The transformation was immediate and dramatic. Where the human fleet had been 33 individual craft working in coordination, it now became a single entity that existed in multiple locations simultaneously. Every movement was perfectly synchronized. Every action was part of a larger tactical plan that no individual mind could have conceived. "Incredible," Nexara whispered, as she observed the change in the human fleet's energy patterns. "They have achieved perfect unity without losing individual identity." "How is that possible?" Vorthak demanded. "Because they designed their systems to work together," Bulkran realized. "While we build our fleets by combining separate technologies, they built their fleet as a single system that can operate in multiple configurations. The unified human entity engaged the transformed Devourer with tactics that transcended individual intelligence. Instead of fighting as separate units, it fought as a single mind that could think in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Every attack was coordinated across all vessels. Every defense was distributed throughout the entire fleet. The battle between the two collective intelligences was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Both entities moved with perfect coordination, anticipated each other's tactics, and adapted to new strategies faster than any biological mind could follow. "This is beyond conventional warfare," Kiwu observed, though his words were now part of the collective human consciousness. "This is evolution in real time." The Devourer entity, despite its newfound unity, was struggling against the human collective. The forced fusion of individual ship minds was creating internal stress that grew with each moment of combat. The Devourers had not been designed for true collective consciousness, and the strain was beginning to show. The enemy is developing. Fracture points, the human collective observed through Yansu's tactical awareness. The forced unity is unsustainable. Then we exploit those fracture points, the collective decided through Daiho's strategic thinking. The human fleet began to target specific areas of the fused entity where the bioelectrical pattern showed the greatest instability. Instead of trying to destroy the entire vessel, they focused on the connection points where individual ship minds struggled to maintain unity. The strategy worked. As the fracture points were attacked, the forced fusion began to collapse. Individual ship minds reasserted their independence, breaking free from the collective with explosive force. The entity is breaking apart, the human collective observed. But the individual ships are still dangerous. What had been one massive entity became 28 separate vessels again, but these were no longer the same ships that had entered the battle. They had been changed by their experience of collective consciousness, made smarter and more dangerous by their forced evolution. Now we finish this, Admiral Daiho said, his individual consciousness reasserting itself as Protocol Omega began to wind down. The human fleet, still operating with enhanced coordination, engaged the separated Devourer ships in individual combat. But these were no longer the predictable enemies they had faced at the beginning of the battle. Each ship now fought with intelligence that had been enhanced by collective experience. The final phase of the battle was brutal and decisive. Human adaptability met Devourer evolution in a contest that pushed both species beyond their previous limits. Ships were destroyed on both sides as tactics evolved faster than defenses could adapt. When the last Devourer ship finally exploded, the human fleet floated alone in space, damaged but victorious. They had achieved something that the galactic community had thought impossible. They had defeated a full Devourer fleet in open combat. Status report, Daiho requested, as the surviving human craft began to reconfigure back into the single vessel known as the Indomitable. 14 craft lost, Yansu reported. Remaining systems at 60% efficiency. But we're alive, and the Devourers are not. The alien evaluation fleet approached cautiously, their sensors struggling to process what they had witnessed. The primitive species they had dismissed as inadequate had just accomplished the greatest military victory in galactic history. Admiral Daiho. Vorthak's voice carried a respect that had been completely absent at the beginning of their encounter. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I must ask, how many more ships like the Indomitable does humanity possess? Daiho smiled as he considered his answer. Chairman Vorthak, every human ship is like the Indomitable. We don't build fleets of identical vessels, we build individual ships,